Islands of Sardinia with my teacher John Scott. We're going to have a wonderful conversation about topics related to what is yoga, how we live yoga, because I understand yoga as a divine science of life, and I've been sharing that for the last years. And thank you to these men. I've been grown a lot, so thank you for having me. We just wrap up a wonderful year together in 3 different modules.
Only a year?
Only a year, but it seems ages, it seems decades.
Thank you.
Because time doesn't exist, right?
Jenny, thank you for asking me to participate in this interview.
Yes, we share a lot of talks during these weeks and months, and it's interesting that even though you're willing to pass on knowledge you established that there is not such a thing as a teacher training.
May I correct you there straight away? I don't have any knowledge, I just have experience. That's what age gives you, as many experiences to reflect upon. I would not call it knowledge.
Okay, thank you for sharing your experience. And in that regard, and knowing there is nothing to teach, what is the role of a teacher these days? How do you see as sharing Ashtanga this strong body of experiences for a
So the role of the teacher is not to hold any power or authority over student. There's a beautiful relationship between student-teacher, that the student will be teacher eventually to another student. So it's always a progressional journey. And so the role of the teacher who's playing that role, teaching a student, is not teaching the student anything. In the tradition of yoga, the word teacher doesn't exist. In the tradition of yoga, the word would be guru. But in the West, there's a misunderstanding. I will not take on the name guru because I'm a Westerner. And rather than using the word teaching, I'm sharing an experience. My ego might think I'm teaching someone something, but my soul understands I'm just sharing an experience. And what I learnt from my guru, my Indian teacher, was that we are, and you use the word knowledge, we are in a state of avidya, which means in a loose translation ignorance to what this beautiful life is about. And so the role of the guru is to remove the poison of conditioned existence, or to move the darkness, that which doesn't illume what life is about. And so the role is to bring that light onto the subject of life itself. The guru is reflecting that light back to the student. The student will eventually realize that the light that is reflecting back is their own light. The role of teacher is to introduce the student to their own inner teacher, because nobody teaches you anything. You have to learn to live life yourself. Nobody can live your life other than you. You chose this life.
And that's also tied to the idea that every class is a teacher training.
Every class is a teacher training. Every class is an experience if you fully participate.
When you talk about the condition in mind and the way how society conditions us, it makes me think if the whole parameter of 200 hours is part of that conditioning. And my reflection is how was this experience transmitted to you by Guruji in comparison to what you do nowadays with your students there, and how much has changed when we put all these institutions in a structure and rules to how you pass the knowledge?
Well, I have been using terms like pirate, like rebel, but to realize that myself, as a practitioner of yoga, I am a seeker. I'm seeking the truth. And we realize that in the journey of seeking the truth, there is an element or a percentage of people that don't want the truth to be known. And everything gets controlled. So even within yoga and the teaching of yoga and the teacher training of yoga is controlled by an outside body of control. 200 hours plus 300 hours to make a 500 hours. With my teacher, my guru, my Guruji, there was no format. There wasn't even a training, and there wasn't even a certificate when I started with Guruji. He had to, on the spot, when the pressure was on him to formalize things, he then said, okay, Advanced Series A, 10 years of study. To be certified. Prior to that certification, he had just given his blessing to share. Because the thing is, why wait 10 years? Why wait 200 hours? Why not just start sharing right from the beginning? So in my own personal case, Guruji knew right from the beginning I was already sharing what I was experiencing. By reviewing it, you are understanding it even more. So really, this role between practitioner, experiencer, sharer, in the process of sharing it, you're connecting to your inner teacher. You're actually learning it more.
You also share with us today about one of the many sutras you learned from Guruji, about this student is not ready yet for some things that we do even in the Ashtanga practice on the personal growth. How do you create the conditions to actually help the students to understand what they are ready for?
The biggest thing is for the student to feel that they have been received. When the student feels like they've been accepted and received, in the process of that relaxing into the condition, the answer arises. Your intuition will see what they are ready for. If they don't feel received, they will be closed. The secret, which is Maitri, the first of the 4 Brahma Viharas, is to welcome your student in with love and kindness. You're accepting them just as they are, which then that dissolves any expectation, it dissolves any fear of not being good enough. You go to a yoga studio, you want to be welcomed into the studio. In the Ashtanga tradition, or in the Ashtanga world, not all students are welcomed in. Not all students get acknowledged when they come in. They just come in, put their mat down, do their thing and go out. There isn't a connection or a relationship made because of this Mysore, Fuji Mysore. People come in and to keep on doing their conditioned thing, they don't even make a connection to the teacher. So the whole lineage has been broken down too, especially because of the feeling in the West that the time of gurus is gone, because gurus, they abuse their positions and they become authorities and they become controlling and their own interests are at stake. But that's not the truth. A true guru does have no self-interest. They do have the looking for the betterment of the person that's coming to them.
And there is a beautiful sharing that I learned from you, probably from our previous encounter, and that when you step into someone's mat, given the role of adjustments in Ashtanga, you are adjusting the posture, adjusting the breath, and adjusting the mind. So I want to ask you, what is the role of emotions and sensitivity in that relationship with teacher-student?
You're asking me some really intelligent questions. You said the moment I step on their mat, this is beautiful, I then immediately think of Julia and go, the moment I step into their playground, I want to step into their space or their playground playfully, or if I'm stepping into their space, I want to step into their space with sukha, not dukkha. So what's really important is that when I'm going in there to adjust body, breath, mind, my nervous system, my energy system has to be in a good space. Okay? So that the communication that happens is that their nervous system's going to respond to that. So if my body is relaxed and steady, when I touch the body, then their body will hopefully take that information and become relaxed and steady too. So the sensitivity, the emotional body holds so much trauma in it, either being shouted at, pushed, shoved or beaten. So when you come in, your verbal language has to be welcoming and kind and compassionate. Yes, it might be directive and authoritative in that sense of bringing a focus, but it's not judgmental or harsh or aggressive. The emotions are held in the body. If we want to release trauma from the body, you're also creating the conditions of physical contact. When you put your hands or your hip or your leg against the student, that communication has to be holding, supporting, welcoming. The body has had a traumatic experience and it's frozen, it's locked in, so you then have what would be called a trauma vortex, a vortex of energy that's stuck. But it's crying out to be met, it's crying out to be heard, it wants to be heard. We might not know what their trauma is, but let's just say everybody's coming here suffering. We don't know what their suffering is, so we want to create the conditions that my body's going to meet your suffering, meaning your suffering goes, here's somebody that understands. Here's somebody that wants to hear.
You use the word playground, which is a fantastic word because reminds us to have fun, and also we have talked about being playful without ego, and I want to bring that topic in because we are so invested in controlling our ego, get rid of the ego, but then we have talked about also being friends with the ego, how we do start to shift that understanding of the ego and go to that world, to that path that is more friendly, and it probably might be more helpful for us to understand that part of our personality.
What's coming up for me now is how do we make friends with ourselves? So let's say in our Western parameters, in our Western world, we think we are body, we think we are mind, we think we are the thinking mind. Within the thinking mind, it's been governed by the ego. So we think we are ego. Our ego thinks it is in control. So let's then put the ego in the same category as the last question. Let's say the ego is the emotional blockage. So you're asking, how do we make friends with it? We listen to it. We listen to what it's saying. We accept what it's saying. We understand what it's saying, and we then say, okay. So the key there is this purely self-gain? If it's self-gain, then it's really ego. We then make friends with the ego to say, okay, how can this be beneficial for the expanded you? You are not here just on your own. You are in relationship with others. If you're ego-driven and it's then for selfish gain, somebody else must be losing. So when we realize that we are in relationship, and in order to be in relationship, there has to be a balance. And the only way we can balance that out is to start sharing. The moment you start sharing, then the personal gain is then being divided up. When we're making friends with the ego, we say, okay, to the ego, you direct it, but let's direct the sharing. So I'm talking about the ego in relationship to yoga practice, sadhana as a spiritual journey. We're taking that ego to direct us through the journey, but for the ego to realize it's not the boss. It's a very important part because it is our personality, it is our individuality, but individuality, actually the true meaning of it is indivisible. What indivisible means within individuality is it's indivisible, it cannot be divided from the whole. When we talk about ego in this way, in a way that it's negative, It's only negative because it's being hijacked by an outside body of influence. So if we then say to the ego, look, you are amazing, this is looking for us, you are incredible, you can direct us this way, you can be the captain. The captain's not the boss. The whole is the boss. Possibly in the future ask the question, what does alignment mean? In this particular context of a conversation, it would be bringing the ego in line with the soul. That both the soul and the ego are on the same journey. They work together as a team.
How it came that a practice that was very designed for male Indian bodies at a certain point in history and come up so popular between women, most of practitioners of Ashtanga nowadays are women. At least in my experience I see that, and traveling a little bit I see that, and how we should adapt the practice to take into account the female body, the female experience, and even, you know, the history of the traumas we bring into the mat. What is the importance of recognizing that feminine side of the practice?
My Guruji and my Guruji's Guruji all worked with women. And the first women were daughters. So their daughters all did yoga. So let's say that's at least two generations back. So let's say 100 years. In the last 100 years, it's been women and men, equal. Let's then say culturally, let's say we're in Italy. The Italian man is programmed differently, and the Italian man will be judgmental about yoga as only for women. So it depends on how we look at it. I would love to experience from a yoga perspective. Let's speak from a neutral position, neither male or female. So I can put myself into this neutral place and then go, wow, to be female, because I have such a connection to the moon, I would love to study my body and the moon. Now this is written into yoga texts. Women are in tune with nature through their menstrual cycle. As a man, now let's jump out of the neutral place and go from being a man. I don't have the same cycle as a woman, but yes, my energy does fluctuate. And yes, I do, now that I'm more sensitive, because my feminine aspect has been awakened more in the practice, because it's not a masculine place. If it's being presented masculine, then yes, it's masculine. But the way it's been presented to me, that my feminine intuition, my feminine sensitivity has come up, and so after the full moon, I feel a loss, a sadness that it's going. She's going. And then the dark moon, I'm really disappointed or sad that she's not there for 3 days. She's gone. I feel that loss. And so then I get excited when the new moon is coming. I get really excited and I look for it, to see that she's there again. So for me as a yogi, I love the fact that the sun is the masculine representation and the moon is the feminine representation. They're not direct opposites, because in our world the sun and earth are direct opposites. So let's say if the sun is the father, the earth is the mother. We are born from this earth. The seed has come from the star. So the sun is masculine, and this explosion of that star is the seed. When we talk about being stardust, that stardust is the seed that comes in Mother Earth. And then from the seed of the star on Mother Earth, we are then produced from Mother Earth. So the moon, we call her sister moon. She's sister moon. So we've got a double feminine here. We've got Mother Earth, sister moon, father sun. Just in those three celestial bodies. For me as a yogi man, I'm going, wow, Is God masculine or feminine? It's neutral. But let's put a gender to the... Has to be feminine. It has to be the womb. It has to be the womb of creation. We were birthed through feminine. And no matter whether you're male or female, you want to get back inside that womb. For me, the whole Hatha Yoga is birthed from the fact that it's masculine and feminine. And because it got hijacked so much it became male, that all male energy went into it, and yoga became, through the ages, from being very subtle internal body experiences, when it really came to the West and the Western male changed it, it became yang. Everything. So the male likes to subdivide things. And when we subdivide things and categorize things, we lose connection to the whole. The feminine is the whole. What's happening at the moment is we've been in a patriarch so long that yoga now is a channel, it's a platform, it's a stage for women in humanity to rise up to say, we need change. So that's why yoga is changing too, to be more feminine. But at the moment it's contaminated that the feminine are still thinking masculine. And I as an awakened male yogi, is saying, no, you follow the moon. You follow the moon, and you do not practice on full moon, you do not practice on dark moon, you do not teach on your period, you do not practice on your period. You meditate on your practice, you get your women together. You start working on the lunar calendar, not the solar calendar. You take the power, the women take the power, but then realize you need support. And that's what we men are doing at the moment, those new age men or the yogi men or the men that are waking up, is that no, the women won't be taking it to being a matriarch, that's the complete opposite to the patriarch. We will finally find Shiva Shakti. We will finally find the balance, Hatha Yoga, the sun and moon.
Masculine and feminine live within us, but not everyone understands the energies or want to listen to those energies. So some men don't want to be soft. Some women are too masculine. Some women are too masculine in the practice. And when I see that through different bodies, this practice is experienced very different. But if we have that balance and then dance, then we come to something that is beautifully on the mat. Probably, I guess, with less pain, because we see women, practicing hardcore and trying to do some things that the men do, and then they are not listening to their bodies. But
you're a victim of that, I know.
Yeah.
You've been a victim of that.
Yeah, of course. We pass through the period of being so much in love with the asanas and forget something else that is hidden behind them, and that's speaking to our heart, for sure.
And this is the beautiful part of culture. The roots of your culture are coming through. This is important, to allow your cultural roots to come through. And you come from a culture that was very connected to nature.
Yeah.
And you're meeting a system, a sadhana, a practice that has been contaminated by the West. I'm asking women to take that, not responsibility in terms of a pressure and a weight, but the ability to respond to the situation in a way that we can turn it around. It's a mistake. Let's turn it around, and in the turning, find the balance.
So I'm heading to India, and I have visited India several times, and I'm talking about feminine energy. India has it. You can feel it, right? Do you think that we practitioners should come to India at any point in our lives? And what was your experience coming so many years? Obviously starting by Guruji, but then doing other things on your own, discovering yourself.
India is a really interesting place. It is both the seed, it is both the tree, it is both the flower, and it's both the fruit. this tree has also been farmed, manicured and manipulated, twisted, turned and shaped. In India, from my perspective, there's parts of India that didn't even know it was colonized by the British. So there's parts of India that are still connected to its authenticity of this mother place of the birth of yoga or spirituality. There's a part of India that then was influenced by the colonization of the British, and they allowed an outside control system to blanket control their country. That changed a big part of India. Fortunately, there was a groundswell that came up and was able to delete that colonization and reclaim their land. But there's a part of India that still believes the English are there, meaning the virus or the poison of the West also has poisoned India. So you have to now be careful when you go to India and be discerning, is this a Western India that I'm meeting, or is this an original India that I'm meeting? Because the Western India is just as material as the West.
Please leave us one of the Guruji Sutra that is still in your mind. I've learned many, but that can be a good lesson for anybody who watches this interview.
Practice, practice, practice. Do your practice and all is coming. What is the practice? The practice is simply learning to connect to your breath. The more we can practice the breathing, it's all there in the metta pattern. The metta pattern of exhalation and inhalation. If I was to give a gender to the breath, the masculine is the exhalation. It's apana. And prana is feminine. In order for me to really be strong, I realize I have to surrender to Mother, to Earth, to be able to then receive the prana, which is the inhalation. The all is coming. It's not knowledge, it's just an understanding. Knowledge is not the ego gathering academic stuff. Okay? It's just a knowing. It's a place of just knowing that you are existence itself. So if you do your practice, if you do your spiritual study, your sadhana, you keep focusing in, whether it's mantra to the breath, and mantra and breath combined bring you into meditation. Meditation brings you to that place where all that is busy is no longer busy. All that's noisy is no longer noisy. So there we have peace and silence. Within the peace and silence, then there's space for the all to come. And the all to come, so practice, practice, practice is going to burn up all of the stuff that's getting in the way of peace and silence. Within the peace and silence, we will hear the voice of God. We can't hear the voice of God when our mind is too busy and it's not at peace. And the all is coming is the realization that the voice of God is your own inner voice. So to tie in all of your questions, the ego will realize if it could just quiet itself down, bring itself to peace, be content with what is, it will then hear the voice of God.
Thank you, Johnny.
Thank you, Jenny.
I'm sure to spend this time with you talking now, but the last years of your presence in my life, I really, really appreciate it. You're just igniting something else, so I always say you're a light in our lives. Thank you so much.
Thank you.